When Yeshua sent his apostles out on their first mission and then sent more out on the second, he restricted them from going into the way of the Gentiles and sent them only to the places where he would later go himself. This is because during Yeshua's ministry, he came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Nevertheless, we often see him traveling on or teaching in the sea. In fact, this is where Peter's calling takes place. Peter's journey with Yeshua, like many of our journeys, begins in unbelief. After Yeshua borrows his boat to teach, he tells Peter to let down his net for a catch. And Peter responds, "Master, we have toiled all night and taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net." And when they had this done, they enclosed a great multitude of fish, which caused their net to break. Yeshua's words had drawn the fish near the boat. Now, after they gathered the fish, it says they began to sink. And at that point, Peter turns to the Lord and says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Unlike the Pharisee of Yeshua's parable, who trusted in himself that he was righteous, lauding himself a Hebrew of Hebrews, Peter takes the disposition of the publican, the lowest of the low, confessing his sin and unworthiness of even being in Yeshua's presence. Yeshua responds, "Fear not. From now on, you will catch men." And he and James and John forsook all and followed him. So who are these men that Peter is to fish? The first indication is in Matthew 8, when Yeshua marvels at the faith and humility of the Roman centurion and says, "Many shall come from the east and west and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness." Luke's version adds that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And here, Judah is last and the Gentiles are first. In the parable of the wedding feast in Matthew 22, after the master has his servants go call the guests who were originally invited and they do not come, the master tells them, "Go into the highways and as many as they find, bid to the marriage." So they are told to gather indiscriminately. But then when the master comes in and finds a man dressed inappropriately, he is kicked out. So this is not a come as you are invitation. You have to gird yourself accordingly. This example is also seen in the parable of the net. The net is cast into the sea, and whatever is gathered in the net is gathered. But once the net is drawn to the shore, the good, meaning those dressed in fins and scales, are gathered into vessels, but the bad are cast away, presumably back into the sea to be caught in another fisherman's net. So the fish represent the Gentiles, but fish aren't the only things in the sea. In Luke's version of this parable, there are two groups that are called. One is called from the streets and lanes of the city, and they include the poor, the maimed, the halt, and the blind, and the others are called from the highways and hedges that lead into the land. Then in Luke 15, we have the parable of the lost sheep, where Yeshua asks, "What man of you having 100 sheep, if he should lose one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he find it?" He then follows up, "What woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose one piece, does not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she finds it?" And in both cases, they called their friends together and rejoiced because they have found that which was lost. And he sums it up by saying, "Likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repents, more than 99 just persons which need no repentance." So in these two parables, Yeshua is showing that even the lowest of God's house are still valuable. In Matthew 21, Yeshua gives another parable. He says, "A man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, 'Son, go work today in my vineyard.' He answered and said, 'I will not.' But afterward he repented and went. And he came to the second and said likewise. And he answered and said, 'I go, sir,' and went not. Then he asked, 'Which of the 2 did the will of his father?' And they answer him, 'The first.' Yeshua saith unto them, 'Verily I say unto you, that the publicans and the harlots go into the kingdom of God before you. For John came unto you in the way of righteousness, and ye believed him not, but the publicans and the harlots believed him. And ye, when ye had seen it, repented not afterward, that ye might believe him. So one of these sons is being compared to publicans and harlots. And that's the one who said he wouldn't go, but later went. Now, as a rule, the house of Israel refers to the 10 tribes under Ephraim. And the parable of the prodigal son who takes his inheritance and travels to a far country and wastes his goods confirms that it was indeed those tribes, because Ephraim was the son that had already been scattered among the Gentiles during the Assyrian captivity, fulfilling the prophecy of Joseph's branches running over the wall. And that is why they were being called from the highways in Luke's parable of the banquet. But the streets tell a different story. Contrary to popular belief, there was still a remnant in the land, just like there was a remnant who accepted Hezekiah's offer to forsake idolatry in 2 Chronicles 30, and they were still there under Josiah. However, most were abroad, as we see in Acts 2, but they still knew their way home, and many were regathered as Judah was being kicked out. Yeshua foretold this in Matthew 17 when he had Peter go to the sea and get a silver coin from the mouth of the sea creature to be taken to God's house. Silver was counted as nothing in Solomon's day, so he overlaid the house and all of its vessels in gold. But to Yeshua, the silver was still valuable, and he made Peter seek it out. So Judah became last in this also, and Israel became first. Although Yeshua came specifically as the shepherd of the house of Israel, he set things in order for his fishermen during his ministry. In Mark 6, after the 12 returned from their mission and Yeshua was unsuccessful at dodging the crowds, he feeds 5,000 men with 5 barley loaves of bread and 2 fish. And when they were finished, they took up 12 baskets of leftovers. And in Mark 8, he feeds 4,000 men with 7 loaves and a few little fishes, and takes up 7 baskets of leftovers. So after all is said and done, Yeshua fed 9,000 men and an untold number of women and children with 12 loaves of bread and 2 and a few little fishes, and took up 19 baskets of leftovers. These figures are very interesting because 12 loaves of bread, or 12 cakes, are placed on the table of shewbread in the temple. It is also the number of apostles who have a seat at that table. And barley ripens before wheat. Now the wheat is the full harvest of 144,000. 12,000 each from the 12 tribes listed in Revelation, which excludes one, Dan. So the 12 baskets collected could easily represent those 12 tribes. Then we have the 9,000 men fed. In the parable of the lost coin, the woman had 10 coins, but one was lost, and then Peter found a coin in the sea. But they weren't fishing yet, so that's 1,000 per tribe that they gathered in the land. The other 3,000 were gathered at Shavuot when those in the sea came home, and others in the land repented. So that leaves us with the 2 and a few fishes and 7 remaining baskets. Israel has already been accounted for in the 12 baskets, which means the 7 baskets are Gentiles, and the perfect place to find them will be within the 7 congregations of Asia. The 2 and a few fishes then are the 7 appointed to serve in Acts 6. The 2 probably being Stephen and Philip, whose ministries we are told about directly. So in John 6, when Yeshua said to gather the baskets that nothing be lost, he was making sure he claimed all of his bread and fish that would be gathered by his 12 apostles and 7 chosen. But in John 18, the worst happens to Peter as he denies the master that he loves, and he cries bitterly, probably feeling like a failure unworthy of the position he had been granted. So he leaves off feeding the sheep and goes back to fishing. In John 21, Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James, John, and 2 other disciples are gathered together, and Peter says to them, I go a-fishing. And they said to him, we also go with thee. So they immediately went to the ship, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was come, Yeshua stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't know that it was him. Then Yeshua saith unto them, Children, have ye any meat? They answered him, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. Therefore that disciple whom Yeshua loved saith unto Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his fisher's coat and cast himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, dragging the net with the fishes. As soon then as they were come to the land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. Yeshua saith unto them, Bring of the fish which ye have now caught. And Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. And Yeshua saith unto them, Come and dine. Now the number 153 is made up of the Hebrew letters Kaf, which represents the eye of a needle, Nun, which represents seed or fish, and Gamel, which represents a camel, or self-will and pride. And this points back to what Yeshua told his disciples after the rich young ruler declined Yeshua's invitation to follow him. Peter was the one who pointed out to Yeshua that they had forsaken all to follow him. But now, here he is fishing. So the question is, what are you doing here, Elijah? Yeshua provides the 153 fish to feed them, just as God fed Elijah after he abandoned his post. But they also serve as a reminder that this fishing job is not the one that gets them the kingdom. To conclude the Elijah moment, Yeshua commands Peter 3 times, Feed my sheep. Now this merging of fishing and feeding sheep recalls Jeremiah 16, where Yahuwah sends many fishers to fish Israel, and after he sends many hunters to hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. For mine eyes, he says, are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. Fish are caught, sheep are hunted. So Yeshua confirms to Peter that even after his error, he is still over both sea and land as fisher of men and acting shepherd in his stead. And now that the head shepherd has been smitten, the hunters are coming to scatter the sheep and the fishermen to catch the fish. So he needs to be doing what he was called to do to make sure none of the sheep or good fish are lost and not found naked when Yeshua comes after abandoning them by fleeing. Elijah ran from Jezebel when his life was threatened because he was afraid. But Peter was not to do the same. In Acts 10, while Cornelius' men were on the way to find Peter, Yahuwah forewarns him with a vision of a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the 4 corners, and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of 4-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. So the first thing to notice is that there are no fish in this sheet. The second thing is that Peter's response to arise, kill, and eat is he has never eaten anything common or unclean. Now for Peter to say this, he must have seen only unclean creatures in the vision, because otherwise he could have just picked some clean creatures to eat. So God must not have presented this as an option, perhaps as a gentle reminder that Peter was not supposed to be picking and choosing, and that he needs to go deeper into the sea than just Samaria to find the pearls that are hidden in the bellies of the oysters. The symbolism is made plain when Cornelius, who was residing in Israel, hence the vision having land and sky creatures, sends for Peter. And although it is against custom for Jews to eat with Gentiles, at the Lord's word, he lets down his net. And when he arrives, Cornelius had already gathered his family and friends. So Peter is off to a good start with his first catch, which, just like the first time, effortlessly fell into his net after following the Lord's command. But after the catch, Peter again begins to sink. In Acts 15, we are told that Peter recognizes himself as the one who is to proclaim the gospel to the Gentiles. But just like with the denial, Peter finds Yeshua's words ringing true yet again as he again leaves off fishing and the fishers and hunters come and he finds himself being sifted by Satan. But he eventually realizes his error and finally understands that his duty is both to shepherd the sheep and to be a fisher of men. And they get back to fishing before finally bringing both the lost sheep and the catch, the coin and the pearls to Yeshua, and dining with him again at the wedding feast.